All right. We are live. Hang tight for a few minutes. The show will start shortly. All right. Just a few more minutes here, guys, and then we are going to start this up. It's going to be a fun night tonight. We're just gonna let this piano music dissolve into the background, and then we're gonna put on our Freud hats tonight. Good day to everyone. I got a question here from Nondescript saying, what do I think of government-assisted diversity preservation communities? Well, I'll tackle that towards the end. I want to set the stage here for a minute. Just while people are piling in. The artist to this song is Martin Kolstedt. I'll post this in the chat. Highly recommend. It's got some amazing piano music. We'll fade out now. We'll start in. Good evening, everyone. It is about 9:15 here in New York City. It is a beautiful Tuesday night. Looks like spring has finally sprung. And Righteous Indignation asks off the bat, is this stream liable to be showed? I don't think so. I don't think so. I have had so many of my videos taken down at this point. And usually when I get showed, it is because I'm posting something the day of a hot topic, and I'm taking a view that is too controversial for polite Western society. So, posting something about Parkland the day of or the day after the Parkland shooting, posting something about Syria the day of or the day after the sarin gas quote attack. I have learned to time my videos. Oh, same thing with Evergreen. When I posted about Evergreen and had a video that had about 100,000 views after only about a day, and then was taken down for hate speech, even though it was just posting raw footage. I've learned to sit back and chill and really take 2 days after a red hot event, so that I don't run the risk of getting too big to get on the radar. This is a guerrilla campaign, and this is, as Rage Against the Machine would say, this is guerrilla radio. So that's what you are listening to tonight. So I'm going to start off the show here with I'm not sure if I should call this a show. This is really just my attempt to be close to you guys. I do a lot more sort of high-end production stuff that I enjoy working on, but this helps me sync my thoughts for the day. So I've come to really enjoy these streams, and I hope that you guys do too. I've gotten some feedback from you that these can be blackpilling sometimes, because they go very deeply in depth on issues that are very complex and looks like we as a cause, as a movement, are an underdog in. So I have decided that every time I do a stream, I'm going to start out with a white pill of the day. So today's white pill of the day is the fact that recent poll numbers shows that 18 to 34-year-olds in the U.S. are moving away from the political left. That's right, the millennial generation in the past 2 years, that is since Trump took office, have moved 9 points from Democrat over to Republican. And it's almost overwhelmingly young white men who have made this move. So whatever black pill you may take from some of the in-depth topics that we are going to do on the rest of this stream, which I think is going to be a fun one. We are going to hit some heavy bombs here, both figuratively and literally, when I show you what's going on with Israel's nuclear program and the Iran nuclear program. But that is white pill of the day. 9 points Democrats have moved from Democrat to Republican. Young white males are becoming aware. They are artificial intelligence, biologically sentient beings who are becoming self-aware of their own ethnic makeup, and it is a beautiful thing for everybody to have that. As I always say, it is diversity politics for everyone or for no one. And so one of my roles in this movement is to try to bring radical equality to the topic of identity politics. I have a few questions here in the chat asking for my take on David Cole. I think Kipper Bang and a Bald Guy Creation both asked about this. I actually tweeted to David Cole yesterday asking if I could interview him. I think that would be a really interesting interview, given that David Cole was one of my entry points into my JQ awakening. And David Cole, bless his soul, responded on Twitter. He came onto my radar on Twitter because he responded with a completely spurred out response to someone named a Jewish Revolution who posted something about David Cole's views on the Holocaust and being afraid of financial blowback from endorsing certain views. I won't put it here. I don't want to embarrass David or say anything negative. I try to stay out of the interpersonal drama in the movement. My place is at a much more academic, theoretical, and explanatory level and a predictive level. This interpersonal stuff is not my bag, baby, as Austin Powers would say. But I will try to have a conversation with David Cole. I think that he could use a little bit more exposure for what he's doing, and I would certainly learn a lot from hearing about his journey. It is truly a fascinating one, and I would also encourage you guys to check him out on Taki's Magazine, which is where he has made his home for political influence. So with that, we are going to move into the primary subject matter, which is talking. We're going to cover three things in the stream today. The first is the concept of the diversity tourist, which is something that I have done. I've done threads about on Twitter, and I'm going to take you through it in detail for those who are new to my channel. Then we're going to cover Iran, and then we're going to cover Kanye. So let's jump right into the material. So first, the reason I'm bringing this up and why I think the diversity tourist is useful as a concept to talk about today is because it has been all over New York local news, and it even made national news for the following incident which took place, which was Upper West Side parents protesting angrily against diversity programs being implemented into their Upper West Side public schools. So if you understand the New York rat race, I will tell you as an attorney, here's the way it goes. First, you try to get as rich as you can, usually with jobs in banking, law, or media. Then you have 1.2 children, sometimes 2 if you're aggressive, and you compete in the public-private school education rat race. You try to get your kids into the best private school, but failing that, you go to an Upper West Side public school. And private school is extremely, extremely expensive, so the problem is these Upper West Side parents are extremely touristy with their diversity inclinations. That is, they are the first ones to espouse diversity for thee, but for their own little precious loved ones, they belong in schools that are white, Jewish, or Asian almost exclusively. So we're going to discuss how this phenomenon came to arise, and then do a little Freudian psychoanalysis of it. So for those who have not seen this clip, I am going to play it for you now.
An emotional meeting on the Upper West Side, parents objecting to a proposal to require each of the 17 local middle schools to reserve a quarter of their seats for students scoring below grade level on state English and math exams. Some parents warning that high-performing students would be shut out of the most desirable schools.
You're talking about telling an 11-year-old you worked your butt off and you didn't get that, what you needed or wanted. You're telling them you're going to go to a school that's not going to educate you in the same way you've been educated. Life sucks. Is that what the DOE wants to say?
Virtually all of the principals in the district and many of the elected parent leaders support the plan. At 2 previous meetings held elsewhere in the district, parents also generally supported the plan.
District 3 currently has very segregated middle schools. The principals have expressed concern that under the blind ranking, this may become worse. So they are looking, and parents are looking, at mechanisms we can put into place to actually decrease the segregation and increase diversity across all of our schools.
But Tuesday's meeting was at PS 199, one of the city's whitest schools, with many students from wealthy families, despite a desegregation plan adopted after a bitter fight 2 years ago. A middle school principal told parents many of their comments upset him.
There are kids that are tremendously disadvantaged that I would love to be able to offer, somebody mentioned $5,000 worth of tutoring for, to raise their test scores. And to compare these students and say, my already advantaged kids needs more advantage. They need to be kept away from those kids, is tremendously offensive to me.
The superintendent will now decide whether to adopt the policy, which would make the Upper West Side District the first to enact a plan to make its middle schools more diverse. Lindsay Christ, New York 1.
So Here is a really, it is truly a newsworthy story, because it is not often that diversity is the home of the social justice warrior. It's not often that is the home of the Upper West Side Jewish mom and dad with their 1.2 to 2 children. It is not often that it is their home. It is their tourist area. Diversity is the place where they go to visit. It is not where they live. And this is a concept that a lot of people have a hard time really grasping. So we are about to embark on a very deep dive on the diversity tourist. So I'm going to begin by talking about, one more thing I wanted to mention in the news before that, which we'll return to in the next section, which is that the White House just proclaimed that the month of May is now Jewish History Month. So the month of February is Black History Month. The month of May is now Jewish History Month, forever after. We will get to that, and I will give you the down low on how that works. Stay tuned through all this. So let's begin with the diversity tourist. What is it? How do they operate? What drives them? What motivates them? And what scares them? So I made a post back in August of 2017 that I'm going to go through in depth now. The diversity tourist is the person who espouses diversity, only visits, but does not live there. And I'm going to use the example of a number of people throughout this stream. I'm going to start with actually, I'll just go through this whole thread for those. Let me know in the chat. Have you guys read this thread of mine? It was pretty popularly shared about a year ago, but I'm going to give you guys a refresher now. So you have to understand that authenticity jockeying is a critical part of the SJW path to power, because authenticity confers authority. This is how newspapers like the New York Times profess to be the paper of record of American history, because they get their authenticity. They're believed to be the authentic source of news, and this confers them a sense of authority. So just to show you how left-wing SJWs react when their authenticity is questioned, it's good to remember the fake news debacle of 2016 and 2017. So I'm going to play this clip so that you guys can get a little refresher here.
The debate on this thing has been completely distorted using incorrect information.
Well, two things about that. Well, first of all, one thing. I know you're not suggesting that I'm using misleading information, right? You let me know what I'm saying that's inaccurate. Because this whole fake thing needs to end, and it needs to end right now.
This whole fake thing needs to end, and it needs to end right now. So a big part of the SJW power play is making sure that their motives are never questioned, making sure that when they talk about diversity, that they are believed to be a certified, certificated, bona fide, authentic lover of diversity. A questioning of their motives, a successful, threatening question of their motives, would destroy the underlying source of power, which is the authority granted by the authenticity they have. So before I move through this thread, I'm going to play a clip from Malcolm X on white liberals. Buckle up.
I think there are many whites who act friendly toward Negroes. A fox acts friendly toward the lamb. And usually the fox is the one who ends up with the lamb chop on his plate. The wolf doesn't act friendly, and therefore the wolf has more difficulty in getting the lamb chop in his plate.
I'd like to point out, though, that...
I say that because it is usually if you study the structure of the Negro community, economically, politically, civically, psychologically, and otherwise, it's controlled by the white liberal, who usually poses as the friend of the Negro, who actually differs from the white conservative in the same way that the fox differs from the wolf. Their appetite is the same. Their motives are the same. It's only their mannerisms and methods that differ.
I would agree that no doubt there have been a large number of whites who have posed as liberals and as friends of the Negro and who have time and again betrayed the Negro. On the other hand, I think one could point to a large number of whites who have struggled for civil rights, for equality, and have got little or nothing out of it, other than quite a few bruises.
Give me an example.
Well, the large number of white students who have gone into the South, for example, working for SNCC and other organizations.
Not working for SNCC or other organizations, but working for the white political machines who benefit by the voting efforts of Negroes.
Okay. I'll be more specific. I would cite Herbert Hill, for example, as a kind of person who has championed Negro job rights, for example, in New York City and elsewhere. He has fought the political machine.
First time I met Herbert Hill personally was when they were picketing to stop the working on the Harlem Hospital in Harlem. Negroes for 10 years had to fight the city to get an annex built on the Harlem Hospital. Because in Harlem we need a hospital more so than anything else. Our people are sick. Plus we do a lot of cutting and shooting of each other, though we profess to be nonviolent. And Herbert Hill brought his forces out and stopped the working on that site. This is the first time I ever saw him. Then when work was brought to a halt on a hospital in Harlem, the same Negroes tried to stop the work at the Downstate Medical Center in Brooklyn, which is predominantly white. They were out there for 3 months during the summer. Couldn't stop anything. And I never saw Herbert Hill out there one time. Now, whenever it takes a stoppage of something that's going to affect the white man, you find the white liberal absent. But when it involves something that primarily will affect the best interests of black people, and black people only, then that white liberal is present. Herbert Hill is the labor secretary for the NAACP. And if he was interested in black people, he would prepare a black man with the type of knowledge and understanding of the labor troubles involving black people that would enable a black man to sit in the same position as Secretary of Labor or Labor Secretary in the NAACP. I'm suspicious of whites who join Negroes and always have to be in the lead, who always have to be the head, who always have to be at the top in Negro organizations. Those whites who really have the interest of blacks at heart, let them give some advice to some Negroes and stand on the sideline. But don't join the organization and then get at the head of it and pose as a friend of Negroes.
Well,
all right, so I'm gonna pause here. I think you get the point here. The point is that Malcolm X saw conservatives or saw right-wingers as wolves, but saw white liberals as the fox. And this is very consistent with what many have called the Krang theory of ethnic politics in America. That is, that often when you have black groups or Hispanic groups as an organized ethnic coalition, they are often the muscle where the brain is often a white liberal or often a Jewish left-winger who is making the decisions and providing the finances for the movement. So that is one of the funny it's one of the funny phenomena that have existed really since probably over 100 years in America. Certainly it became popular as a political tactic in the 1920s. So in order to get buy-in to minority populations to have leadership there, it is necessary to have this authenticity, and this authenticity can never be punctured, or else they are seen for what they are, which are individuals who are doing this, who are hijacking black and brown movements as their personal path to power, because they cannot achieve equivalent levels of power leading white organizations or competing in a meritocratic environment. Instead, they get more power from hijacking black and brown ethnic movements and using them as their own personal path to power. So this is the phenomenon of authenticity jockeying that white liberals will do with one another in order to make a credible claim to lead black and brown movements. So I call this authenticity jockeying, and I'm going to show you guys some funny examples. This is from the website Stuff White People Like. So Stuff White People Like is the acronym is SWPL, SWPL, and it was a semi-famous viral internet site about a decade ago, and it produced some incredible gems. So what it did is it pretended that it was a alien, a Martian, who had just stepped down from Earth and was now doing a sociological survey of white people and the things that they like and how they act. And in particular, it targeted the white liberal mind, the mind of the diversity tourist. So in number 19 of the catalog, there's the following passage, which is Stuff White People Like Traveling. Upon returning home, they will also find an affinity for a particular beer or liquor from a country they visited. They use this as an excuse to mention their travels when at a bar. Oh, I'll have a Czechoslovakian Pilsner. You see, that was my favorite beer when I was traveling through Slovenia and the Czech Republic. The second type of white person travel is third world. This is when they venture to Thailand, Africa, or South America. Some do it so that they can one-up the people who only go to Europe. So that is authenticity jockeying. And then there was a pretty amazing post on 4chan that I read back during the hunt for the wild Trump election. And it goes as follows. It says, Holy Mother of Mary, I just inadvertently discovered the golden goose of all triggers. And here he says, stay with me, Peds. Let me preface this by saying I have friends that are cucks. I don't hold it against them. I tend to believe they will come to their senses one day. So I'm talking with one of my cuck friends that's a Facebook shill reposting a bunch of Huffington Post articles. I was talking to him about his kids and school and which school they're going to attend because they all go to private schools. He starts talking shit about Trump and Betty DeVos, that's the head of the Department of Education now under Trump, and how they are going to ruin the school systems. And I say, well, you made your decision to go to private schools long before Trump and DeVos had any influence. He chuckles sheepishly and says the public schools in his area suck. So I give him a little shit and I say, oh yeah? So you are all about open borders as long as those kids don't go to the same schools as your kids. And then I say the magic words, fake American. And then this guy that I knew and loved absolutely loses his shit on me. I am talking epic meltdown. I thought at one point he was literally going to attack me. I don't know what it is with the left and that label fake. They really, really hate it. I mean, fake news drives them fucking insane. So I walked away from that conversation, not really realizing I'd stumbled onto something. I told my based wife, and she laughed at his meltdown. Then I told my cucked mother-in-law, who I also have a really good relationship with, and she got very upset over that term fake. You can't just throw that word around, she said. Huh? So this got me scratching my head. I don't watch CNN, so maybe they've somehow poisoned the minds of the masses to believing that fake is an evil word. So I started dropping the label fake American every chance I got when I knew I was talking to a lefty, in a very casual, sarcastic, joking manner. And you know what? Sure as shit, every one of them had a strong, visceral response. They were triggered. So I bring this information to this patriotic community because there is power in triggering cucks, and I truly believe this fake American label is the mother of all triggers. I suggest you start using it every chance you get, every tweet, every text, every post. So this is what we're entering now is the territory of the fake diversity advocate. The person who advocates diversity for me, but monoculture for me. So we're going to move now to the portion of the stream relating to who these guys are. So I'm going to first play a clip by Tim Wise. Tim Wise is a anti-racist and diversity advocate, author of books such as White Like Me, which many in this movement will find to be absolutely hilarious because Tim Wise is Jewish. So it is a classical my fellow white people at stake here. and on behalf of Jews, I apologize. But it's a really ugly example of it, because this is a guy who made the most aggressive career out of camouflaging between being ethnically white and ethnically Jewish. And here he is, Tim Wise. For those who have not heard him before, I'm going to play a little clip
When
here.
we look around and we see today in our politics a rich white man telling working class white people that their problem is brown people, we need to understand the historical pedigree of that. That is symbolic of the entire history of race and class politics in America. The history of rich white people telling working class and poor white people that their problem are black and brown people.
Okay, so here he is with a very typical, anti-white speech, haranguing whites for pursuing their own identity politics. And here I'm going to read from a Facebook post that Tim Wise made. I think it was shortly after the Trump election, and it's pretty stunning stuff. So I'm going to read this for you. You'll have to trust me that this is very faithful to the source material. I saw this with my own eyes, but I'm just going to pull it up for you here. And here's a direct quote from Tim Wise. "You white people." Now that's just it's just very funny when you see "you white people" next to his book entitled "White Like Me." So this is something that I struggle with, being somebody who is trying to do everything I can to help the white identity movement, struggling between the use of "we" and "you." I think that I'd like to tell myself, at least, that my out card is that I have not, do not, and will never do anything subversive in that way. I think every time that I alternate between "we" and "you" in that way, I do it in the spirit of love and in the spirit of trying to be honest, because a lot of people do not want me to say the word "we." They want me to differentiate myself, and I acknowledge that I do so selectively from time to time, but I try to do that based on the context at hand here. So I'm just going to pull that up on the screen so you can see the aesthetics of what we're dealing with. Let me check in with the chat real quick, so that in case you guys think I'm missing anything. But let me know if the sound is okay here, because we're going to be playing a lot of sound clips over the course of this stream. So this is what White Like Me author Tim Wise says about white people. He says, "You white people are on an endangered list, and unlike, say, the bald eagle or some exotic species of muskrat, you are not worth saving. In 40 years or so, maybe fewer, there won't be any white people around, and that's a good thing." So I want you to remember this quote and really burn it into your brain. Burn it into the deep part of your brain, the amygdala, the hypothalamus. Burn it into the real base primal part of your brain. Because later in this stream, I'm going to be talking about a short story that everyone should read. And I'm going to post the link to it now. It is by Tom Wolfe, and it's called Radical Chic. And maybe I'll read this right now, actually. Here, I'm going to post this in the chat so you guys have the link. And for those watching the replay of this, I will post it in the description. But this is an absolutely stunningly insightful article written by Tom Wolfe many decades ago. And it tells the story of an Upper West Side party by mostly Jewish and upper-class white people who are hosting a fundraiser for the Black Panthers in the 1970s. And I'm going to read the following passage so that you can see how even in the 1970s, people were aware of the diversity tourist phenomenon. And here's how Tom Wolfe describes it. He says, one rule is that of, and he's talking about one rule of this Upper West Side New York Jewish and elite WASP left-wing racial communist belief system. And he says one rule is that nostalgia de la buie, that is, the styles of the romantic, raw, vital, low-rent primitives are good, and middle class, whether black or white, is bad. Therefore, radical chic invariably favors radicals who seem primitive, exotic, and romantic, such as grape workers, who are not merely radical and of the soil, but also Latin, the Black Panthers, with their leather pieces, afros, shades, and shootouts, and the Red Indians, who of course always seemed primitive, exotic, and romantic. And now here is the line that I want you to also burn with you into your brain. At the outset, at least, all three groups had something else to recommend them as well. They were headquartered 3,000 miles away from the east side of Manhattan, in places like Delano, the Hispanic rape workers, Oakland, the Black Panthers, and Arizona, New Mexico, the Indians. They weren't likely to become too much, underfoot, as it were. Exotic, romantic, far off, as we shall see, other favorite creatures of radical chic had the same attractive qualities, namely the ocelots, jaguars, cheetahs, and Somali leopards. What you are seeing here is the pet. What you are seeing here is the Krang model. You are seeing people who want a far-off pet, something that is muscular, beautiful, strong, fierce, primal, low intelligence, and can be controlled. This is the Krang model of political control. But even in the 1970s, this was recognized. And just as I thought that this italicized word, underfoot, was really remarkable here, because I thought underfoot really meant so that it wouldn't be crushed under you. But I looked up a precise definition of underfoot, and there's two variants of it. One is directly under one's feet, but the other is constantly present and in one's way. So one of the things that the white liberal power structure relies on is that diversity is not constantly present and in their own way. So remember, this was 1970s that Tom Wolfe is writing about here. That diversity is best when it is 3,000 miles away, when it is strong, angry, primal, low rent, and not constantly present. That is, the diversity tourist visits, but he does not live there. Now, let's move on. One of the things that is amazingly predictable about the diversity tourist is that they do not live in diversity. So here is Tim Wise. He of the White Like Me, All White People Should Die. And again, I am just going to point to this quote one more time because of just how fantastic it is. Right? He says, remember, Tom Wolfe talks about the ocelots, the cheetahs, the endangered species, the low-rent endangered species. And what does Tim Wise describe as the kind of endangered animals who are worth saving? The muskrat, the bald eagle, or some other exotic species. Just keep that in mind. That is how you are viewed by these SJWs and whatever other labels you want to ascribe. So here is Tim Wise. Tim Wise lives in 97%, I believe it is Marin County, California, 97% white, 0% black, 1% Hispanic. I don't know if you can find a jurisdiction on earth more white than this. Certainly not in America. And this is the diversity tourist, the one who tells you to live amongst diversity, but will stay the farthest fuck away from it. Diversity for thee, monoculture for me. So, diversity tourism is the thermal exhaust port of the white SJW Death Star. It is a small but gaping weakness known all too well to people of color themselves. So this is a point I want to stress because one of the one of the amazing things about the diversity tourist phenomenon is just how well known it is among black and brown populations and how much they absolutely hate white liberals. So if you watch my last stream, you'll be familiar with the Roots annual Worst White People contest, where the final round, this was the 64-man bracket, where the final round was Andrew Anglin versus white allies. And and the Root voted, the Root readers of the Root magazine, voted that white allies were the worst people on earth. The worst white people on earth, worse even than Andrew Anglin. So there is a huge tension between people of color and upper class white liberal leadership. So I'm going to continue now with the thread, but this is the thing that makes white liberals shirk away and immediately run away from a conversation, as if their authenticity about their claims for being in diversity because of their love for diversity rather than because of their own personal path to power. This is the thing they have to protect at all costs, because if that dies, then so does their support from the POC coalition, and so does all of the power that they worked so hard to position themselves to accrue to. So here you go. The dirty secret of SJW politics is that white Jewish SJWs use POC muscle and votes for their own power, and people of color resent allies as much as enemies. So here is an article that was from some Black Lives Matter magazine that I was reading once, and here it is. It was questions to white allies. And here were the questions. Ask yourself why you need to go to a Black Lives Matter protest. Why are you going to a protest when you are the oppressor? Ask if you're willing to die for us and to dismantle this system. Your presence only triggers the black people there. Number 2, reparations. Nothing you have is yours. Let's be clear. Nothing you have is yours. This is the black identitarian position that white liberals pretend to be okay with when it only takes down the white middle class, but not the white upper middle and upper classes. Or I should say the white and Jewish upper middle and upper classes. It is throwing the people below you to the into the machine. It is kissing up and kicking down, so to speak, kissing up to the diversity industry and kicking down the white middle class. So now the article continues, intentional acts of disruption and shifting of structural power. What would happen if white allies gave all their money to black folks? Shifting structural power is key. Reparations falls in line with that as well. At this point, ain't no white allyship. You're either an accomplice, and even then, we don't trust you, or you ain't shit. We don't need white saviorism. We don't need white people to speak for us. We need our reparations, and we need intentional disruption. And yet, despite this, all of the highest posts in the diversity industry are occupied by either the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant elite or more frequently by the ethnic Jewish elite. And again, I say this as a Jewish individual who is just completing a cultural anthropology study of the subject. That is what I'm doing here. It's all science, my friends. So now we're going to read further 10 ways that you can actively reject your white privilege. Take up minimal space during anti-racism dialogue and protests. Never invite people of color to the table for the sake of claiming diversity. This is a attempted shield of protecting against dominance by the white liberal elite. And number 10, recognize that you're still racist no matter what. Well, this does not stop the diversity tourist, because to the diversity tourist, professions of diversity and visiting diversity is sufficient to claim protection. This is the concept of lamb's blood. Lamb's blood comes from the Jewish Passover concept of putting lamb's blood on your door so that the angel of death will pass over you. And this is what white liberals and Jewish liberals do, as diversity tourists, they point to all of their diversity tourism and use it as lamb's blood to say that the angel of diversity should pass over me because I have this lamb's blood on my door. I have a signal to the angel of death, to the angel of diversity, not to affect me. So, and this is something you'll see in my upcoming part 2 of the diversity industry video. One extremely contentious issue in the alliance between white Jewish SJWs and intersectional Afro-feminists is the struggle over land. Just pure, plain and simple land. So, this is in the gentrification struggle. This is in the South Africa struggle that where expropriation of white land without compensation is such a huge issue. So here is the top 10 demands of Black Lives Matter as of an article about a year ago that I pulled this from. White people, if you don't have any descendants, will your property to a black or brown family. White people, if you're inheriting property, give it to a black or brown family. If you are a developer or realty owner of multifamily housing, build housing for black or brown people. White people, give up the home you own to a black or brown family. White people, if you intend to leave your property, if the people you intend to leave your property to in a will are wrong thinkers, change the will and will your property to a black or brown family. Notice the running theme here. It is all about property, owning the land, the land, the land, the land. Moving on here, number 6. White people, rebudget your monthly income so that you can donate to black funds for land purchasing. Notice how much land has to play here, which is exactly what the diversity tourist phenomenon is about. It is about not sharing the land. It is about using people from a social class who is lower than you, but larger than you in electoral voting and in muscle, but not letting them onto your land. And that is what makes this phenomenon, the phenomenon of the Upper West Side parents.
A school that's not going to educate you in the same way you've been educated. Life sucks. Is that what the DOE wants to say?
Virtually all.
Life sucks for them if they have to be subject to the same diversity that they campaign on and call lower class white individuals racist for not adopting. But this is it. Remember, it is as real as the land. It is as simple and primal and carnal as the land itself, which is what much of the struggle is about, and is what the diversity tourist mindset is about. They must be 3,000 feet away, 3,000 miles away, and kept as exotic pets, but not allowed in their house. So we're gonna move on here. The divide is over more than mere gentrification. It's because of the soil part of blood and soil. Land confers total ownership of space. So if you've been paying attention to the intersectional Afrocentric identity politics of the day, you'll notice that the word space is an enormous, it's been memed into an enormous word, a word with tremendous memetic value now. Safe space, decolonizing spaces, hate-free space. Space is ownership of energy. It's ownership of something primal and deep in the human brain about who owns this area, who owns this land, what people are the incumbents, who is the indigenous person, who has moral, legal, social, and ethical rights to everything that's occupied in the space that you're dealing with. This is why space has come to be such a huge part of the intersectional dialectic. So, moving on, not only do these, which gets me to why diversity tourist is the most savage frame to set on the white or Jewish SJW. It's a double gut punch to a soft underbelly. Not only do these two short words, diversity tourist, embed the authenticity wrecking frame of fake, it also embeds the frame of white or Jewish imperialism on POC land, on the land of people of color. It embeds the frame of white colonialism, of white imperialism. And those white or Jewish individuals who come in as colonizers cannot have the authenticity to accrue power within POC movements. And so they're booted out. A self-respecting person of color is forced to reject the allyship of a diversity tourist or someone even perceived as such on pride alone. That is, if you're a self-respecting black man and you are friends with somebody who your fellow black community is accusing of being a carpetbagger or a diversity tourist, on pride alone, you're forced to distance yourself. This is because white colonialism of black land is so contentious that people of color must counter-signal white allies with even a sniff of white colonialism on them. It's a lot like conservatives having to disavow people who aren't Nazis just because of the accusation. It's a frame that splinters coalitions. And this is why I preach diversity tourism, diversity tourist, diversity tourist, diversity tourist. Zip code, please. Always ask for the zip code. In sum, SJW is a wonderful phrase, but stick diversity tourist to other public targets. So I'll check in with the chat here. How are you guys feeling tonight? Are you guys, this is more of a lecture right now than an interactive chat, but I'm going to take some time now to answer any questions. Let me know in the chat. I'm going to put on a little bit of mood music while I go through some of these questions. Then we're going to move through some examples, and then we're going to get to the political theater of Iran. So here is more piano music from Martin Kolstad. This is called Goal. So we're gonna play Vet, V-E-T. I can't wait to show you some of the examples of this. I have an archive at this point of these, and we're gonna start with Conan O'Brien and the Haiti shithole country incident that happened a few months ago. But while I'm pulling that up, I am going to put on a little bit of mood music. All right. Lux says NPR did a little bit on gentrification yesterday. Well, that is as hot button an issue as there can possibly be between the high-low coalition against the middle. That is the high upper-class white and upper-class Jewish coalition with the lower-class black and brown ethnic coalitions against the middle-class white coalition. Gentrification is a hot button issue because it divides the high from the low. All right, let's see. Any other questions here before I move on with the material? All right. Well, I'm going to pull up. We're going to move to Team Coco here in a minute. All right, looks like, okay, Dude Guy asked, what song is this? This is by Martin Kolstad. And this song is called Vet. Tremendous albums this guy has. Joe Miller asked, what are my thoughts on alt-hype and Sean Last? Did I watch the last Sean Last JQ video? Let me turn this down a little bit. I did not watch the videos. Part of this is I'm looking forward to watching their videos when I have time. There's so much else going on, and I would be deeply surprised if they were to say something that I didn't already know. If it goes so viral, if I'm told by enough people whose credibility I value that they're must-watch videos, I will check them out. But my general impression is just that they have been persuaded, in part because of the debate on Worski. I saw on JF's show that Alt-Hype and Sean Last were inspired by the debate that I had with JF, Halsey, and Jonathan McIntyre about the JQ. They were inspired by that to look into it. I am going to be doing a series on Jordan Peterson in a couple weeks, which is going to deal with the JQ in a more academic manner rather than in the sort of theoretical manner that I've dealt with it, in my typical speeches or streams. But I get the sense that they acknowledge, that Sean Last and Alt-Hype acknowledge the truth of certain elements of the JQ that we discuss, and are just coming around to it really for the first time, but are doing it with the best of intentions. All right, so here we go. I'm going to now move on to the material. Let me turn down the tasty tunes, and we're going to talk about diversity tourists now, and some examples so that you know it when you see it. So if you remember, there was when Trump called Haiti a shithole country, there was a tremendous upsurge of white liberal and Jewish liberal signaling about how great Haiti is. And it was probably embodied in no better a tweet than this one by Conan O'Brien, saying that Haiti is truly a beautiful country, with him bare-chested in his lily-white skin, drinking out of a coconut in crystal-clear blue waters with an idyllic mountain background. Now, Conan, who I believe lives in New York, but certainly lives absolutely nowhere near the demographics of Haiti, has some pretty awe-inspiring facts associated with it. So, currently, the State Department has the following warning about Haiti as a travel advisory. There are 4 levels of Haiti of travel advisory warnings from the State Department. Levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. Level 4 is red alert, do not go under any circumstances. And the level just below that is Haiti. And the Department of State recommends you reconsider traveling to Haiti due to crime and civil unrest. It says, reconsider travel to Haiti due to crime and civil unrest. Violent crime, such as armed robbery, is common. Local police may lack the resources to respond effectively to serious criminal incidents. If you decide to go to Haiti, avoid demonstrations, arrange airport transfer and hotel in advance, or have your host meet you upon arrival. Do not physically resist any robbery attempt. Enroll in our Smart Traveler enrollment program to receive alerts about emergencies. And basically tells you don't go out after dark, only go out in places where there's armed guards, of which there are some amazing pictures of Conan on this trip with his team of about 20 armed guards around him at all times. And there were just some pretty amazing memes to come out of this, which show the diversity tourist in his full glory. So this is what Haiti looks like. Generally speaking, the average income in Haiti, annual income, is about $1,300 per year. So that is, that's pretty gruesome. It is the 20th poorest country in the entire world, even though it used to be one of the richest countries in the world when it was a white colony. When it was ethnically white in large part. But that's a story for another day. There's some great lectures online about the history of Haiti, which I will post links to. But this is the diversity tour, sipping pina coladas while the pets are kept 3,000 miles away. It's just about as idyllic as you can get for someone who lives in the upper class and who uses the poor lower class as their political muscle. So this is just a short tour of pretty awesome memes of diversity is a tourist destination for the diversity tourist. They don't live there. And here's a comment noting that every resort in Haiti, including the one that Conan stayed at, has barbed wire fences and armed guards that separate you from the people of Haiti. Now, there's probably no statement. If you can substitute Haiti for any number of American or Western civilization jurisdictions, and the point would be made with equal strength and fervor. So, but it's not just Conan O'Brien. Consider, for example, Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner, who I'm going to actually, here is a tweet by Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner is the famous Jewish Hollywood film, I forget if he's a director or producer, he might be both, but he's a heavyweight Hollywood hotshot. And here is a tweet by him in January of this year saying, "Make no mistake, this shutdown," that was the budget shutdown, "boils down to one thing, racism. The GOP is frightened to death of the browning of America. They will lose this last battle of the Civil War. Diversity is our strength." So this is another white genocide dog whistle, although this might not even be a dog whistle. I mean, this is just screaming it out loud that that white America is going to die and that diversity is our strength. And not long after that, in fact, the week before, Rob Reiner posted the following tweet from his Malibu mansion. Malibu is 88% white, and I think the next 10% is Hispanic, mostly workers who are who do their lawns and their laundry and their dry cleaning. And here is Rob Reiner saying, "Even waking up to this idyllic Malibu waterfront couldn't tamp down my disgust that we have a racist sitting in the office." So here is diversity is our strength. America is 65% white. He's living in a 90% white jurisdiction. This is the diversity tourist. This is the fake ally. This is the fake diversity propagandist. This is the fake multiculturalist. Multiculturalism for thee, monoculturalism for me. So the list goes on and on and on. This is I'll pull up some stats here in case you need to see it with your own eyes. But just be aware of this phenomenon wherever you see it, because it is anytime you see an upper class person preaching diversity, 9 times out of 10 you're dealing with a diversity tourist, and the first thing you have to do is to undermine their authenticity. They are fake, and call them out as such, as using diversity as their personal path to power, kissing up and kicking down, kissing up to the powerful diversity industry and kicking down the white middle class. Kiss up, kick down. Remember that phrase. So another one comes from Joe Kennedy of the Kennedy family. So here he was mocking Trump, saying, "You sat high atop your mom's shoulders and held a sign that read, 'Build a wall and my generation will tear it down.'" That is, he's talking about the Soviet wall, and this is he's basically saying that Americans should not build a wall at the southern border. That's Joe Kennedy in his 93% white jurisdiction with, what do you know, a giant wall. Say it with me. Multiculti for thee, monoculti for me. Look at that big, healthy, juicy wall there. And the general thesis is that these people could not climb to power as a middle-class white guy, so they had to hijack black power movements and brown power movements to succeed. So I posted the link to Radical Chic earlier. I encourage you all to check that out. And I'll wrap up with the diversity tourist here. I'll wrap up with that for now. Are you guys? We'll move on to Iran now in a minute. But how is the chat feeling? Give me some thumbs up. Show me some love if you guys are having fun tonight. If you're learning something. And remember, words are very, very important. That's why we talk terminology here at Frame Game Radio. It's about the frame. It's about controlling the frame, controlling the language. So I'm going to put on a little bit more musica, and then we're going to move on to Iran and political theater. You guys are going to learn some of the facts a lot of people don't want you to learn about what is really driving America's foreign policy. So I'm going to play another song by Martin Kolstad. This one is called Ombleh. O-M-B-L-E-H. And I'm going to check my Streamlabs here for a second. I tried to apply to YouTube to have my channel be able to have monetization on it about 3 months ago, and even though I'm far above the number of subscribers and views needed to qualify for Super Chat and things like that, YouTube has my channel under permanent review. It's been under review for 3 months, even though they're supposed to get back to you within a week. So I don't think Super Chat is ever going to be an option on my channel here, because this is a little too real for the SJW orthodoxy. So for those who want to donate, for those who want a Super Chat type feature, you can hit up the Streamlabs link that I have there. But no pressure, no worries. It's all love. Just letting you guys know. All right, I'm getting some requests for Slayer. Well, it's Tuesday night in New York, first spring day. I think Slayer might be the next stream we do. I think we're gonna enjoy a little bit of soft love tonight. Insane Hermit asks, when are you going to put out videos about the Inside Game? That's actually coming up on my next diversity industry part. All right. So we're gonna let this fizzle out, and we're gonna move on to Iran. Now, everyone is talking about Iran right now because of this pretty amazing, ballsy speech that was done by Bibi Netanyahu, where he says Iran lied about their nuclear program. So here at Frame Game Radio, we love primary sources. I always try to go directly to the source so that you guys see with your own eyes what you might have only seen in the headlines before. So we're going to watch a little bit of Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel and head of the long-reigning Likud party there, give this speech that was broadcast live in English. And you are going to witness true Israeli political theater. So with that, I'm gonna play this in parts. So here is the famous speech that happened yesterday.
Months ago, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu began making what he's calling a major announcement on Iran. This comes shortly after a visit by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Let's listen in.
I believe he starts at around a minute. All right. So here he is. He's about to step out in front of this giant PowerPoint projector. And it's really lo-fi. It's one of these things where typically when you've got a Jewish lobby group like this doing some big presentation, they have high production value. What shocked me about this at first was just how low production value it was, how low rent it looked. So here you go. Check it out for yourself.
This secret atomic archive. We're going to show you Iran's secret nuclear files. You may well know that Iran's leaders repeatedly deny ever pursuing nuclear weapons. You can listen to Iran's Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei.
I stress that the Islamic Republic has never been after nuclear weapons.
You can listen to Iran's President, Hassan Rouhani.
Nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction.
He's going through a list of Iranian officials who have said that they're not pursuing a nuclear weapons program, right?
This is repeated by Iran's foreign minister. Iran.
So then he goes on to the big reveal.
Both irrational as well as immoral. Well, tonight I'm here to tell you one thing. Iran lied.
So this is not a meme. This is not a test. This is not a joke. It is really as simple and basic and subliminal and in-your-face chutzpah as this. In a internationally broadcast press release, Israel says about its neighbor nation in giant 2,000 pixel font, Iran lied about their nuclear weapons program.
Big time. After signing the nuclear deal in 2015, Iran intensified its efforts to hide its secret nuclear file. In 2017, Iran moved its nuclear weapons files to a highly secret location in Tehran. This is the Shorabad district in southern Tehran. This is where they kept the atomic archive, right here.
He's saying Israel has found the secret atomic archive of Iran through our spy ring.
Few Iranians knew where it was, very few, and also a few Israelis. Now, from the outside, this was an innocent-looking compound.
Now, this is a top comment right here from Todd Packer. Says, might as well have done it in Comic Sans. That was that perfectly encapsulates my thoughts on how low rent this looks. Right? I mean, for the most cyber technologically savvy country on earth, this is just a terrible, terrible look. And it's about to get even more comical in a minute here. So he's trying to paint this sinister picture. From the outside, it looked innocent, but inside,
it looks like a dilapidated warehouse. But from the inside, it contained Iran's secret atomic archives locked in massive files. Actually, they're a little bigger than this. A few weeks ago, in a great intelligence achievement, Israel obtained half a ton of the material inside these vaults. And here's what we got. 55,000 pages. Another 55,000 files on 183 CDs. Everything you're about to see.
Look at that reveal. So I'm going to pause it here. So these are copies. None of these are originals. This is all theater, right? All of these binders, all of these CDs. You can just imagine his press secretary and their set of 500 little minions and admins who are saying who are trying to get the right color coordination of the binders so that they look optimal authority. They look most they look most official, and to get the right sheen on the CDs. And it's pure theater. They're copies. None of these are the originals. They're lugged into this press conference room just so that Israel can say, look at what our spy ring found in Iran. Now, all of this would be somewhat understandable if you didn't know the history of the Israeli nuclear program, which I'm going to go over tonight. But if you know the history of the Israel Israel nuclear development program, all of this becomes strategic offensive projection. The need for this over-the-top theatrical histrionic display, because they are so guilty of what they're accusing their political opponents of, that the only way out is for them to own the issue by being the most aggressive prosecutors of the issue, so that no one prosecutes them. Because if a prosecutor ever came from them, for them, they would be so guilty so fast it would make your head spin. I mean, they even admit it, and I'm going to play clips of that for you later. But this is what happens when you own an issue. You get to become the prosecutor of it.
Is an exact copy of the original Iranian material. You may want to know where are the originals. Well, I can say they're now in a very safe place. Here's what the files included: incriminating documents, incriminating charts, incriminating presentations, incriminating blueprints, incriminating photos, incriminating videos, and more.
Incriminating charts, incriminating documents, incriminating photos, incriminating videos. You know, it is an enormous extortion on public displays, essentially what it is. I mean, this is exactly, you can imagine somebody going through your private computer and seeing if you have any hate speech on it, and someone making a public display, doing a press conference saying, we have incriminating videos on Frame Game Radio. We have incriminating photos. I mean, this is the language of an extortionist. But this is all the prime minister. I mean, this is not a presentation that a prime minister should be making. This is what you have heads of state for doing. And the fact that Bibi had to personally make this speech lends an air of desperation to it. And when you combine that with the lo-fi theatrics, this whole thing just reeks of the most ridiculous kind of political influence campaign. Something designed not just to affect foreign officials, but really to affect the rank and file, so that the public relations numbers for support for Israel or support for rejecting Iran is increased. This is not directed towards officials. This is directed towards you guys.
We've shared this material with the United States, and the United States can vouch for its authenticity. We will also share it with other countries, and we'll share it with the International Atomic Energy Agency. So let me tell you the history of this material. We've known for years that Iran had a secret nuclear weapons program called Project Ahmad. We can now prove that Project Ahmad was a comprehensive program to design, build, and test nuclear weapons.
All right, so he's going to go on to say that between 1999 and 2003, Iran was building a secret nuclear program, and that they later agreed to shut it down, but secretly they were continuing it under a different name. You're going to see that Israel would very understandably be able to identify those kinds of tactics, because it's exactly what Israel did through the Wiesenthal Center, through stealing uranium, through through all sorts of spy rings, including Jonathan Pollard and others, through their Dimona plant where they were developing this, and I'll get into all this in a minute, but I'll move on.
From these files, developing nuclear cores, nuclear implosion systems. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I mean, I think it is pretty amazing, you know, that if someone was preparing nuclear tests, obviously we'd be able to detect if someone set off a nuke. I mean, that would very clearly be registered on satellite data. But anyway, Bibi goes on to scaremonger about how Iran cannot yet even hit the U.S. with its missiles, but soon will be able to.
That Iran is continually expanding the range of its ballistic missiles, its nuclear-capable missiles. They started with 1,000 kilometers. They're now up to 2,000, roughly. They can reach Riyadh, Tel Aviv, Moscow, but they're working on far, far greater ranges. They're planning much longer range missiles to carry nuclear weapons. So these files conclusively prove that Iran is brazenly lying when it's...
You're going to find out about what brazenly lying... You're going to find the true meaning of brazenly lying here in a minute. But I'm just going to skip ahead and see if there's anything else here. I think...
Title, Defense Ministry.
I think that's the main point I want to get across. He says, look, they're doing a nuclear weapons program. So now we're going to talk about Israel's nuclear weapons program. This is one of the worst kept secrets in all of Washington, D.C. and foreign politics. So it's widely believed that Israel has had nuclear weapons since the 1950s. And in fact, there have been members of the Israeli Knesset, which is their parliament, who have acknowledged that they have nuclear weapons and have threatened other countries with nuclear weapons if they were, if Israeli sovereignty of the Jewish state sovereignty is ever challenged. And what is amazing about the Israeli nuclear weapons program is the U.S. response to it. So before I go through the history, I want you to understand the law. Okay, in the U.S., if you work for the government, the United States government, there's something called the Israel Nuclear Weapons Gag Order. And what this means is that if you are a federal employee, if you work for any U.S. government agency employee, any U.S. government agency employee, that's not just the State Department. If you work for the Department of Agriculture, if you work for Housing and Urban Development, it doesn't matter. Any employee and any contractor, that is anyone who has any, even if you don't work for the U.S. government as an employee, but even if you are an independent contractor who is, say, doing software development or doing construction, you are barred from discussing Israel's nuclear weapons program. And there are some hilarious videos online available of journalists trying to ask about Israel's nuclear weapons program and getting completely shut down by State Department officials who say that it is illegal, that is jail time, if you talk about Israel's nuclear weapons program. Now that's a pretty amazing fact for those who don't understand how it could be that there's one country whose nuclear weapons program you're not allowed to talk about. And part of this is because of something called the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Act, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, that is, the NPT. And this is a international treaty whose objective was to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons. And there is Israel, there are international laws in place to prevent foreign aid to countries, and not just foreign aid, but any number of trade treaties, to countries who have not signed the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And amazingly, Israel has not signed it. That is, Israel has not agreed to the UN treaty to not develop nuclear weapons. However, the United States is barred from providing foreign aid to Israel because Israel did not sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So it is an amazing bind that Israel is in here, because they are receiving aid and their official position is that they do not have a nuclear weapons program. And they need to maintain that position on political grounds in order for them to continue to receive the billions and billions of dollars that the U.S. receives, that Israel receives annually from the U.S. So they absolutely need to say they don't have nuclear weapons. At the same time, they have not signed the treaty which would prevent them from developing more nuclear weapons. And there is so much evidence for the nuclear weapons treaty, that, for the nuclear weapons development, that they can't deny it either. So that is the source of the gag order. And because Israel has such an overwhelming influence on American politics, AIPAC, the JCRCs, the Jewish Community Relationship Councils, and the Jewish Federations, among other groups, has such a huge impact through the Israel lobby on American geopolitics that American officials are wrapped up in this massive lie as well. So Israel cannot say that they don't have nuclear weapons, but they can't say that they do have nuclear weapons, which leads to amazing sound clips such as this. This is yesterday, Chris Cuomo from CNN asking Bibi Netanyahu point blank, does Israel have nuclear weapons? So you have to watch this. You have to see it to believe it. And Caligula says, need food badly. Yes, I do need some food, but I'm going to play this clip. Check it out.
Disclosure as an issue should work every way. The United States should say what it has. You know where I'm going with this. A yes-no question for you. Does Israel have nuclear capabilities and nuclear weapons? Yes or no?
We've always said that we won't be the first to introduce it, so we haven't introduced it.
But that's not an answer to the question. Do you have them or do you not?
Of any country. It's as good an answer as you're going to get. But I'll tell you one thing, Chris, and I think it's important. You know, Iran signed NPT. Iran signed all sorts of commitments. Iran said that they don't have this nuclear weapons program, and Iran calls daily for the annihilation of...
Okay. Notice that. Now, for this is an amazing thing. Breitbart had this, and I like Breitbart a lot of the time, but Breitbart had this unbelievably Zionist article, I mean, not America First article, called CNN's Chris Cuomo shills for Iran deal, gets basic facts wrong in combative Netanyahu article, saying that Cuomo conducted a largely belligerent interview with Netanyahu, going so far as to confront Netanyahu about Israel's suspected nuclear arsenal. The chutzpah, right? To challenge them about something that their official state position is that they don't have, because otherwise they can't receive aid from the U.S. I mean, this is just a horrible article where it just nitpicks at Cuomo for saying the Atomic Energy Commission instead of the International Atomic Energy Commission. I mean, just agency. I mean, just totally stupid stuff. But nobody wants to challenge Israel on this. Nobody in the U.S. government, because people have been trying to stop Israel's nuclear development program since JFK. If you look into the recently released documents about JFK's assassination, they were recently declassified. There's some pretty smart stuff in there about JFK, John Kennedy, trying to stop Israel from developing nuclear arms, and that he was trying to arrange international inspection agents to go to Israel's Dimona nuclear power plant to check whether or not they were building the weapons. And then randomly, JFK was assassinated about a week or 2 weeks later. I mean, make of that what you will, but it's a pretty astounding series of events that JFK, and if you read about JFK's relationship with AIPAC and the American Zionist Council, and trying to get AIPAC to register as a foreign agent, as an agent of a foreign country, and failing at doing so because he was assassinated and then his brother died, and they were really the only two checks on the balance of power that AIPAC held. It's a pretty gruesome history of America failing to keep Israel's foreign nuclear weapons program in check. So you have to see this again, because look at how Netanyahu stops dead in his tracks the moment Cuomo asks him about nuclear weapons.
Israel's position and steal this information so we can know the truth. Disclosure as an issue should work every way. The United States should say what it has. You know where I'm going with this. A yes-no question for you. Does Israel have nuclear capabilities and nuclear weapons? Yes or no?
1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi.
We've always said that we won't be the first to introduce it, so we haven't introduced it.
But that's
And
not an answer to the question. Do you have them or do you not?
Of any country. It's as good an answer as you're going to get. But I'll tell you one thing, Chris.
It's as good an answer as you're going to get. He's saying, yes, we have them, but we're not going to start a nuclear holocaust. But if he has them, then you need to fork back over the $3.1 billion that was allocated in America's in the budget just passed by our legislature. But remember, this is the guy who just made a big stink out of this. Iran lied. Meanwhile, hey, does Israel have nuclear weapons?
But that's not an answer to the question. Do you have?
We've always said that we won't.
Nuclear weapons? Yes or no?
You lied. You lied saying you don't have nuclear weapons. You lied for the money. You lied so that you could get tens of billions of dollars from the American government. You lied. You lied, and then you lobbied, and you got American government officials to pass a law making it illegal to talk about your lies. And then you have the chutzpah. You have the chutzpah to go in front of the international community and put this in Comic Sans. You lie, Bibi. You lied. All right. Now, with that out of my system, you're going to learn a little bit something now about the Israel lobby. Just how powerful is it? Well, all 535 members of Congress are asked to sign a loyalty pledge for the American Israel Political Action Committee, AIPAC, in order to get, they need to sign a pledge of loyalty to Israel in order to get not just AIPAC money, but money from any of the Jewish federations or JCRCs. And here that is explained very well by Cynthia McKinney. So I'm going to play this clip for you. This was a congresswoman who was a bit of a whistleblower about the power of the Israel lobby.
Would call the interference in. Did you experience anything in that realm as far as what one would call the interference in American policy by AIPAC?
Yes, I first-handedly and also frontally was assaulted by the presence of the pro-Israel lobby to such an extent.
Physically assaulted?
Well, politically assaulted to such an extent that my father had to ask the question publicly, what does Stone Mountain, Georgia have to do with Israel? What I was doing was servicing the needs of my constituents, and I was not allowed to do that because I did not toe the line on U.S. policy for Israel.
What line is that they wanted? Were you told directly that you had to toe a line, or explain that to me?
Well, every candidate for Congress at that time had a pledge. They were given a pledge to sign. And I was new on the scene. And so the pledge had Jerusalem as the capital city.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
Parents observed, sign the pledge.
Can Congress people have to sign this pledge?
Yes, you sign the pledge. If you don't sign the pledge, you don't get money. So, for example, it was almost like water torture for me. My parents observed this. I would get a call, and the person on the other end of the phone would say, I want to do a fundraiser for you. And then we would get into the planning. I would get really excited because, of course, you have to have money in order to run a campaign. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks into the planning, they would say, did you sign the pledge? And then I would say, no, I didn't sign the pledge. And then my fundraiser would go kaput.
So, well, I just want to get into this pledge a little bit more. So this is basically something that is mandatory, that every congressperson has to sign, saying that, what, Jerusalem, you said, is the capital of Israel, and what else?
You make a commitment that you will vote to support the military superiority of Israel.
We will stand up to Iran.
This is called the quantifiable military edge. That all 535 members of Congress are asked to sign a pledge to keep Israel as the most powerful military country in the region. This is QME, Qualified Military Edge. This is what she's referring to. You need to sign a if you're a congressman and you want money from the Jewish donor base, here's what you need to sign. You see it with your own eyes. We are all source material here. QME is a concept in U.S. foreign policy whereby the U.S. commits itself to maintain Israel's qualitative military edge over its adversaries. That is, its technological, tactical, and other advantages that allow it to deter numerically superior adversaries. This policy is defined in current U.S. law. So you need to sign a loyalty pledge to Israel. If you're running for a Senate seat in Alabama, you need to sign a loyalty pledge that Israel must be militarily stronger than Iran and militarily stronger than Syria. Pretty amazing, huh? Welcome to the world of the diversity industry lobbying arm, where identity groups hold our politicians at gunpoint, at financial gunpoint, to essentially bilk the system so that they control our not just foreign but also domestic policy.
Public, this probably nobody had said anything about it, but I made it public, and then, you know, the excuse was, well, you know, those were just overzealous advocates for Israel. So then the tactic changed, and but this is what is done for 535 members of the United States Congress.
Play it again, Sam. You guys getting the picture yet when I talk about the power of the Israel lobby, the power of the diversity industry? All 535 members of Congress are asked to sign this loyalty pledge to keep Israel the most militarily powerful, to continue to give aid to Israel, to do whatever's on the agenda that year. And that's going to include mandatory Holocaust classes, mandatory money to a variety of Jewish American museums. Look, I say this as a Jewish guy, but you know, we don't need this. This is money and power. This is political power. This is too much. This is horrible. This is poison This is poison oak choking a tree. So I'm gonna play that again. We're all about learning here at Frame Game Radio. Okay, we are all about making sure you take this with you.
And then, you know, the excuse was, well, you know, those were just overzealous advocates for Israel. So then the tactic changed, and but this is what is done for 535 members of the United States Congress. 100 senators, 435 members of the House of Representatives have to now write a paragraph, which basically says the same thing. So it's not a pledge, but it's a paragraph, and you post it, and, you know, there are these forums you have to go to at the synagogues or whatever. And
you have to go to forums at the synagogue. Now, of course, I probably don't need to tell you just how much of United States legislation has been drafted in synagogues. It's pretty amazing. There's I think the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Here, let me pull this up for you guys here. This is okay. Okay, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, as well as the Voting Rights Act of 1965, were drafted in the conference room of the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, which is where the Jewish Leadership Conference is housed. I think the Jewish Leadership Conference is a shortened version of the Jewish presidents of major Jewish conferences, I think is the full name of that organization. It's one of the large umbrella organizations that sits on top of the ADL. It sits on top of AIPAC. It sits on top of the Jewish federations. They all report up to this conference. And that's where a lot of major American civil rights acts, a lot of major American policy documents are drafted in synagogues like that. So the more you know.
Then, you know, if you don't perform appropriately, then you don't get money to run your campaign. The problem is that it requires an awful lot of money to run a campaign.
Okay, so Earl Hilliard. Earl Hilliard goes on to explain what happens when you go against the Israel lobby and how they fund your opponents with 3 times the amount of money they'd normally give just to make an example out of you if you don't sign the pledge. That's how they get everyone to sign the pledge. So here's Jim Traficant, another former congressman, on the power of the Israel lobby.
They're controlling much of our foreign.
Well, do you see our support for Israel as having produced a kind of a tidal wave of hostility that then in some way did cause 9/11? Isn't it fair to say?
I think because
I want to skip to this clip. Right.
Editorial anti-Semitic remarks on my radio show.
Of Arab and Muslim.
On my radio show, and I am shocked, frankly disappointed, and these remarks sound like the conspiratorial anti-Semitic remarks of people that we have heard from over the years. And
this is Jim Traficant, former Ohio congressman. And remember, whenever someone accuses you of like conspiracy mongering, when you're talking about the Israel lobby or the Jewish lobby or the diversity industry, remember that these identity groups work as networks, large international networks. So you have, for example, you have the World Jewish Congress, as well as the Jewish Agency and the World Zionist Congress. And these 3 agencies sit as an international superstructure, which all local national Jewish groups have to report up to. So, for example, the American Jewish Congress reports up to the World Jewish Congress, and AIPAC and the ADL, they all report up to the President's Conference, which reports up to the Jewish Agency. A conspiracy just means a plan by 3 or more people. I mean, every time you have the Israel lobby taking a policy position, you have thousands of different groups that all operate in sync towards the same common goal. I mean, that is the definition of a conspiracy. To that end, whenever you have a parent company of a corporation that has the same goal as its subsidiary organizations, and they all lobby for the same thing or play the same affiliate programming, that too is a conspiracy. But it certainly is. I mean, there's no other word to describe. I mean, there is a better word to describe. It's just plan. They plan together, and they plan for their common enterprise, which is political influence. And I'm trying to give you guys a little bit of anecdotal evidence here, because we'll save some more empirical stuff for a nerdier stream. But here's Jim Traficant explaining it.
what you said was, quote, talking about Israel and quote, Jewish people, they're controlling much of our foreign policy, they're influencing much of our domestic policy. What do you mean by that? Because that sounds to me like a bizarre conspiracy theory. Why would you say something like that when it's just, first of all, patently untrue?
Number one, I served in Congress for 17 years. I've seen members question bills and votes on how does Israel feel about this. I must have heard that every time there was a significant vote. But Israel, through its lobby, has manifested so much power over the United States Congress that we're embroiled in wars that I don't believe we should be. Our kids are coming back in body bags. And in the long run, this Israeli lobby is going to hurt Israel. So as soon as you mention Israel, someone claims you're an anti-Semite. The truth of the matter is, I'm pro-American, Sean, and I don't like, hear me. Hear me. I don't like what's happening in America today.
All right, that's fair.
Our kids are coming back in body bags.
Wait a minute, but you're saying
we're bankrupt, completely broke.
But you're suggesting here that we're fighting wars on behalf of Israel. But you just mentioned the 9/11 attacks.
I think a lot of that has been influenced
Hear me
by
now,
Israel.
Congressman.
But our policies in the Mideast have been so one-sided and subjective. Without objectivity, we've created so many enemies, the only way they can strike back is we've imported the terrorists from those actions.
Wait a minute.
So if you question it, you're saying you're an anti-Semite.
No, that's not what you did. That's not what you said. You said they're controlling our foreign policy. They're controlling our domestic policy.
Yes, I believe they are.
Hear me now.
I believe they control the Senate and the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
That's insane.
And they're controlling our foreign policy.
Congressman, that's conspiratorial nutjob stuff.
I know you need ratings, but just hold it.
I have ratings.
I'm not saying we should be friends over there with anybody. I'm saying we should be objective. We have developed serious enemies from a one-sided policy. And yes, I believe Israel, through their lobby, has manifested total power of the Congress of the United States.
Power.
And my concern is that taxpayers and the citizens of the United States should control their government, not a foreign entity.
To suggest, as you're doing here tonight,
listen to this,
that they control our Congress, that, quote, they are influencing and the sole control of influencing of our domestic policy is an absurdity. It sounds like you are a kook.
Sean, I'm not suggesting it. I'm telling it. Yes, I believe they manifest a great power over America.
I mean, that is a bone-chilling pause. I'm going to play that again.
I'm telling.
Remember, this is a Ohio congressman, 17 years.
And the sole control of influencing of our domestic policy is an absurdity. It sounds like you are a kook.
Sean, I'm not suggesting it. I'm telling it.
Sean, I'm not suggesting it. I'm telling it. Whew. I listened to that, and it's honestly, read Big Israel by Grant F. Smith. You'll understand all of this. But anyway, so let me move on with a few more points here.
10% speaking, 90% clapping. In fact,
thanks for being with us.
The Benjamin.
I mean, just as I don't know if you guys remember this, but Rand Paul got in a lot of trouble years ago for not clapping loud enough for Bibi Netanyahu. So if you remember, Netanyahu, when he made his speech before Congress recently, got more standing ovations than any president, right? Because it's usually fairly partisan. But because the Israel lobby finances both the Republican and the Democratic Party, both sides overwhelmingly are on their feet for Bibi Netanyahu. I don't think I need to remind you of the statistics I've mentioned many times before, like, well, okay.
Netanyahu address was...
Will you back down from, quote, the
support of Israel? She said, then why would you seriously contemplate containment or propose a budget that cuts aid, including aid to Israel? She said he was unenthused. He was lifelessly applauding...
Now, this is Jennifer Rubin. She is one of the lead writers for the Washington Post, and this is a big hitter in American media. And here she is saying that because he did not clap loud enough, Kaihoro says, "Please clap" in the chat. That is perfect. Because Rand Paul did not clap loud enough for Bibi Netanyahu, he's been faking his support for Israel.
Bibi. Oops, almost like he's been faking his support for Israel until now. Ooh, with admirable retweet numbers there. She's doing pretty well for herself on Twitter. She said Paul's staff complains that he clapped plenty during the speech. Fair. Real question should be about
enough.
Record and positions. But that is after multiple tweets saying that man had not clapped nearly enough.
Yeah, I thought maybe that she meant the position of his claps. Applaud more
over 50 times.
So this is the clip, okay?
if a United States senator...
This is what he's getting in trouble for.
That would have shown proper enthusiasm for a foreign leader.
No Arsenio Hall
Not
groups
at all. And you know he watched that show back in the day.
Okay, look.
There you go. This is what he got in trouble with at the Washington Post, saying that he has been faking his support for Israel, so his funds should be pulled from the Jewish donor base and given to an opponent because he clapped like this.
Man. Look at how crazy this is. In America, if
this is a foreign leader,
a United States senator does not enthusiastically enough applaud a foreign leader while in the midst of giving him a standing ovation over 50 times, not good enough. You didn't bow down enough to Israel's prime minister.
Fun stuff. So, well, this has been going on for a long time. I don't want to make this stream so long that people don't want to watch the replay. So, I wanted to get a lot more into the nuclear just how egregious Israel's nuclear program is. I mean, it's so everyone has known it since the 1950s. It has been totally in your face. So, for Israel to make this charade about Iran lying about its nuclear program is just the most vomit-inducing kind of, fist balled in a rage kind of hysteria that it should invoke in any red-blooded American to see us being mistreated like this. But I think I am going to play one clip by starring John Pollard, who is Jonathan Pollard was a spy, and he was a very famous spy who was pardoned by the he was pardoned by President Trump. He's pardoned by President Trump. He who just declared the month of May Jewish History Month. He was pardoned by Trump, and Jonathan Pollard is believed to be partially responsible for Israel's nuclear program because Pollard stole American nuclear secrets. And here is a pretty amazing clip to get a picture of Jonathan Pollard in all of his glory. But I am going to first just show you so that you see with your own eyes that I'm sorry, I don't think it was it Trump? I think it may have been Obama who actually pardoned Jonathan Pollard. I think he was pardoned in 2015, but there's evidently a new deal in 2017 that Trump signed to allow Pollard to immigrate to Israel. And now every Jewish organization was lobbying for Jonathan Pollard to be released. I'm just trying to set the stage so you understand what's at stake here. So Israeli supporters lobby to, okay, here you go. Here's some articles I'm going to show just so you understand what the word conspiracy really means here. All it means is Israeli groups that are all sister companies of each other working towards the same common political end. So that's obviously what they do. It's what any lobbying group does. So yes, it's obviously a conspiracy. It just is. It's a plan. There's no meaning to the word conspiracy at all if this is not one. So I wanted to show you a list of the organizations who lobbied for Jonathan Pollard, but it was everybody. It was AIPAC. It was United Israel Appeal. It was the ADL. It was Mark Rich and all the donors. And here is Jonathan Pollard so that you can see his character.
Soft reasons having to do with I was motivation, however. Who all is here, just out of curiosity?
Part of the population, so violent.
I was motivation, however. There is no... I can see the rats have all come out of the woodwork to be with you here. Well, that's good to see. There is no excuse... For what you did? For the breaking of a law. Never. There is an explanation, however. Not an excuse, but an explanation.
And that explanation is?
I can give you a number of soft reasons why I was motivated to do what I did.
Soft reasons?
Soft reasons, having to do with a family that was destroyed in the Holocaust, having to do with the realization that this government in the 40s had abandoned the Jewish people to its fate in Europe.
So, when asked why he spied for Israel and gave America's nuclear secrets to the State of Israel, he answered it was because of the Holocaust, and it was because America didn't do enough for Jews in the 1940s. Even though, and I say this as a Jew, America saved their asses, unilaterally saved their asses. And yet, 40 years later, who's stealing your nuclear secrets and why?
Soft reasons, having to do with a family that was destroyed in the Holocaust, having to do with the realization that this government in the 40s had abandoned the Jewish people to its fate in Europe. My sentence did not reflect proportional justice. It reflected political vengeance, plain and simple.
Among the men who prosecuted you are Mark Richard, Deputy Assistant Attorney General, Stephen Spivak, former Chief of Special Prosecutions, and Abe Sofair, State Department's lawyer. These are three of the chief prosecutors, all of them Jewish Americans.
Yes, and there were
anti-Semites?
And there were capos also during the concentration
You see that smile?
Wait.
I'm going to replay that.
There were Jewish capos during the concentration camps.
These are
Is that what
people-
you're saying about Richard, Spivak, and Sofair?
As far as my personal views are concerned, with Judge Sofair and his involvement in this case, I find it less than admirable.
Why did you sign the plea?
My wife was being held hostage.
How do you mean?
I was told directly that if I did not cooperate by signing the plea agreement, the medical care that she required at the time, basically to live, would not be provided her.
How would you describe the year and a half so far that you've spent in prison, Anne?
I think the only comparison I can make to it is that of what Auschwitz must have been like 47 years ago.
Another Holocaust exploitation. She's been giving free medical care. She's kept alive. And this is what they're saying Auschwitz is.
In terms of medical treatment, in terms of abuse.
Like if you were going to deny treatment or give someone poor treatment, would you spend tens of thousands of dollars, of the taxpayers' dollars, to send her to one of the finest medical establishments in this country, in the world perhaps?
Well, of course they have to say I'm lying. It seems to be the standard form here in the Bureau of Prisons.
You've compared this to Auschwitz.
Yes, I did.
It's...
And I have not finished telling you the medical atrocities that were extended to me.
But this is not a concentration camp.
When I have to go back in that cell right now, and I have to try to live with myself.
For the rest of your life, perhaps.
God willing, it won't be.
Okay, so I want to draw your attention, though, to the smile. Many of you may remember a thread that I did on the smile that gives it away, and maybe this will be the last topic we do tonight. But I'm going to play it for you.
Treatment. Would you...
Required at the time, basically, to live, that if I did not...
Why did you sign the plea?
My wife was being... views are concerned, with Judge Sofair and his involvement.
Wait. There were Jewish capos during the...
Capos were Jewish people who helped the Nazis find and prosecute other Jewish people during World War II. That's what he's referring to. It's a slur word that Jews use for Jews who do things that aren't good for the Jews. I know, I've been called a capo a million times.
Richard, Deputy Assistant Attorney General, Stephen Spivak, former Chief of Special Prosecutions, and Abe Sofair, State Department's lawyer. These are three of the chief prosecutors, all of them Jewish Americans.
Yes, and there were...
Anti-Semites?
And there were capos also during...
Look at that. Freeze frame, smile, you're on candid camera. Now, I'm going to explain why this is significant. This is the identity politics racism card, the anti-Semitism card that every left-wing SJW, they can't help themselves. When they are trying to make a racism or an anti-Semitism accusation, their frame will break occasionally, and their true motivation is revealed. They know that the moment they drop that word, racism or anti-Semitism, suddenly it shifts the frame of the conversation. No longer are they on trial for all of the millions of sins they're guilty of, but rather the other person becomes suddenly on trial for being a racist or an anti-Semite for pointing out their own sins or crimes. So that is what is happening here when you see that smile crack. So I did a thread on this back in the day that I'm going to show you some examples of this. Here is an example of the high sparrow smile. And here I write here in this thread, you can generally tell a cuck from a high sparrow. A high sparrow is somebody who uses identity politics not because they are weak and doing it as a acquiescence, but because they're powerful and they're doing it as a power play. By whether they're motivated by fear or by greed. You can see greed instantly when a white person or a Jewish person says anti-white rhetoric with a smile. And here's an example.
And because I am white, none of these thoughts about racism in this video are my original thought. I accredit to most of the ideas that I have picked up from these two videos created by two very lovely black YouTubers. So go and check them out, please, because they're lovely and awesome, and like, why not? All white people are racist, all men are misogynistic, all cisgender people are transphobic, all members of a majority are biased against the members of the minority or oppressed group. In fact, most people are racist, misogynistic, transphobic, ableist, etc.
There it is. There's that smile, right? What does that remind you of? Now let's look at another example of that frame-breaking smile that happens midway through an argument when an SJW breaks out the anti-Semitism or the racism card. So here's another one.
You're a fucking white man. Aren't you quite aware by holding that video camera on me that you are surrounded by your privilege, right?
You guys see the smile break?
You are surrounded by your privilege, right? Take your
Hold on.
privilege somewhere else, please. Because your privilege is not welcome here. So unless you are here to dismantle your privilege, please find somewhere else to go.
Sorry, I'm gonna play that moment.
Camera on me that you are surrounded by your privilege.
I don't know why it's buffering right at the critical moment when that smile cracks. I'm gonna take it off of the full screen so that you can see it one more time in its full glory.
White man, aren't you quite aware by holding that video camera on me that you are surrounded by your privilege?
Look at that smile.
Right?
Did you see it? Do you guys see it? There it is. That's the one, because she knows it shifts the frame.
Surrounded by your privilege.
There it is. There's that smile, that Jonathan Pollard smile. You're going to see it everywhere now. You're going to see it everywhere. This is the frame game, guys. It's because of that cathartic whoosh that just floods your amygdala with all these good feelings, because you suddenly know if that frame sticks, you are not on trial anymore, and you don't need to abide by the rules of logic or logos or reason. It's all emotion and mob mentality, and because the mob is on your side, you win. It's that rushing feel of vindication and catharsis that happens. So here's another example, and then we'll wrap up the stream. Here's Steve Shives.
Comes from...
Pay attention to that smile the moment it happens.
Steve, here is the show where I answer...
Take out the full screen.
Steve, here is the show where I answer your questions, and this week my first question comes from Jonathan Vale. Hey, longtime fans, someone asked me this question, and I wanted to know what you think about it. How do you feel about white people being proud of being white? How do you feel about black people being proud of being black? I think one of those things is very okay, and the other one is very not okay. Would you care to guess which one is which? Steve, here one is which?
There it is. There is the frame game smile. There it is. Shifting the frame, no longer needing to abide by logic and reason, and can just go off into the emotion-laden, mimetically strong words like racism and anti-Semitism, where you are no longer on trial for your personal sins and can instead use those words as exploitation to gain personal power. And that takes us right back to the start. What is the diversity tourist? The diversity tourist is somebody who uses diversity as a political instrument as their own personal path to power. They abide by the maxim, multiculturalism for thee, monoculturalism for me. They want diversity to live 3,000 miles away from them, to be kept as a pet where they are the master. It is a high-low coalition against the middle, and if you take nothing else from this stream, we've covered a number of topics here, including Iran and Israel, and many other concepts, which I'll put in a timestamp later in the replay. But remember the diversity tourist, and call them out wherever you go. Remember, knowledge really is truly half the battle. So share this with friends, share the concepts, share the video if you can, and I will talk to you guys soon. Have a great evening and good night.